Well, like I said before, we really appreciate you agreeing to join us and everything. Excited to hear what you have to say on the change management topics, specifically within the public sector. I know you're very well versed when it comes to training. So I don't know if you'd like to maybe give yourself a little introduction, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. My name is Elif Item. I am from the AX and D365 background. So a lot of the old school D365 people knows that the previous name for D365 was AX or Exapta. I started my career in the consulting space. In the training world, actually, I worked for a company that was not related to Microsoft at all, but training is always just sort of my passion. So I was a trainer in that company for many years. Then I became a consultant in the Exapta or AX space, now D365. I worked for a partner for many years implementing D365, which I think helps me in my general role because I not only have a good understanding of the product, but also I have a pretty good understanding of how projects run, generally D365 projects, and what are some of the D365 project challenges, when we should train people, when should be a more of a quiet time, who should be involved. So that experience really just sort of helped me to come to this point. And almost around 8, 9 years ago, I decided to leave the consultant world and started my own company. And my company is a training partner for Microsoft, and we only focus on training. We support implementation partners in this process also, and we work directly with our customer community and we offer them product training. We sometimes offer them also change management training, and we try to offer a hybrid approach where we offer them online training, in-person training. So pretty much anything related to D365 training that we are involved. And I've been just really enjoying this process after being only a consultant. Now I'm, owning my own business, sort of like brings up new challenges. You have to sell your product and you have to also market your product and, really keep up with D365. So it's really just sort of stretched me in a different way. And I live in Dallas. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer and a Microsoft MVP for the FSCM or AI ERP product line, and just happy to be here.
And I want to say I miss the days of Exapta. It's such character. I like the name better than D365 FOSCM, blah, blah, blah. I like
I
Exapta.
know, I know,
Me and people
I
calling
know.
it Zapta, Zapparoonie. I mean, just people would call it whatever. I miss it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I
You're
know,
listening to
yes,
Microsoft. You want to go back? I'm all for it. I'm right there with you. Bring me
I
back to
know.
Zappa.
Use the name
I,
again.
I was telling someone that I learned Exapto when it was on a CD, and they were all like laughing about it. It's just basically you could put the CD into the computer and it would install or
Yeah,
download, install it, and those days are for sure over now.
sure. Yeah,
Some
it
things
was
are
when I
definitely
started too.
easier. Yeah, some
Yep.
things are definitely easier. Some things are definitely far more complicated than how it was, when we
Mhm.
used to install it through a CD.
Yeah.
Change management never changes. Change management is kind of the same.
Well, even change management, I think changes a little bit. I think everything is bound to change because people change. I think we are different than 10 years ago.
Mm.
When you look at the way we live our lives, the way we use technology, our kids are definitely on a different sort of like different perspective about technology and how to utilize technology. So I think there is some change in change management as well. The fundamentals of it is same, like change is hard, like that I don't think is changed
Yeah.
much, but the way we approach it, I think, we are trying to be a lot more purposeful, I think, based on the audience that we are catering to. Because if you're on an organization where the average age range is about 50, they've been working in that organization for 20 plus years, that's a completely different change management challenge than a really youth-driven organization when everybody is younger and they're more open to new ways of using things. Yeah, from that
We need to
perspective, I
figure out
think
how
we
to use
can make a difference.
TikTok to insert your change management principles. Like we need to create
Yes.
20 TikToks that'll insert all the change management we've got to get done this quarter, and then just start
Yes.
getting them out there in the wild, and then it just
Yeah.
happens organically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to be, it's we give hard time to TikTok. By the way, I don't have TikTok, but
Neither do
both
I
of my
yet.
kids do. Yeah, I'm just like from a distance, seeing what it is.
I'm
But I
also
think
there.
yeah, the fundamentals of what TikTok brought to I think the adoption mentality is that the short things are better for attention. We
Yes.
just cannot keep like the even like I think it's hard to blame the younger generation with this, even us. There are a lot of studies done and they say that it's really hard for someone to keep attention more than 7 minutes at a time. So it really has pushed I think the people in the adoption industry is to make everything smaller, much shorter, so that and to the point, not necessarily to dilly dally around some things, but really to show them what they need to learn. And I think it's a good way, a good sort of like a shift in the training and adoption strategy. We're sort of forced to take over it, I guess.
What do you think,
Through
Savannah? Is that true of your? Because she's in the younger generation.
Yes, she is.
I was gonna say, with that being said, should we really like shorten up this podcast here to get
I was
understanding?
wondering. We've already started, and we've got about 3 minutes before people are tuning out. So
Let me just like fire these questions at you really quick.
Yes, maybe. I don't know. Maybe instead of just answering every question for 5 minutes, I give like 3 sentence answers to each question, and then it would be just a lot quicker to move through things.
I was
I'm up
listening
for
to a
it if
guy
you
at
are.
NPR, a science guy on a drive yesterday, who actually said that people still enjoy podcasts because they like hearing people talk to each other, as
Mm,
opposed to hearing somebody talk to them. There's still something neurologically in the brain that is attracted to people talking to each other about subjects. So that's why
yeah.
podcasts are still really popular.
Mhm.
No, I do agree. I agree. And I was listening to something a couple of days ago, and this lady was talking about how she's around my age, and she was like get into Pilates and going into these Pilates classes. And when she was talking about how at the end of the class that no one like talks to each other, like just basically that they don't like even the instructor or the younger generation, they finish the class and they all leave. And she was just saying like I sort of linger around and try to make eye contact with people, and as soon as you make eye contact and then you're just starting to just converse on a topic, get to know each other. And I think that's something that's sometimes overlooked, that we really, I think, need to have that face-to-face interaction. And even if you're listening that interaction, it's much more enjoyable than just
Yeah.
listening somebody to talk about some general topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Liv. My mom, it's kind of fun. She goes to workout classes, and I was going to them at one point too, and she was like, "Oh, have you met anyone there? Like, who do you talk to?" And I'm like, honestly, like I just go and then I leave and I do the class.
Yeah.
Like she has good friends that she's
Mm.
made within these classes. And I'm like, yeah, that is such a stark difference between. I'm like, maybe I need to start, creating those conversations and that sort of thing. So that's interesting to
Yes.
say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of change management, I'm curious how you guys have seen it evolve kind of within your careers within the dynamics world. And maybe if I don't know if you have any specific things when it comes to like public sector or just like change management as a whole. I'm curious to hear kind of your guys' viewpoints on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think public sector is a little bit different than, I think we just sort of touched upon to that topic, is really the structure and the culture of the organization is, I think, very important in determining which change management strategies are going to be successful. Public sector is generally known as to be, bigger organizations or more structured, and the people who work there, they require more specific instructions, detailed instructions, etc. There are also some requirements around how you need to perform, how people need to perform their tasks, as far as regulations and things like that. So I think, I don't want to just like put every public sector organization into the same bucket, but I think there we can definitely think about some tendencies. And in that case, I think it's important to, I think one of the universal things that apply to public sector that I see that applies to almost every organization is that if you keep your D365 project as an IT project, and if you don't involve the business side, the organizational leadership, the people who are going to be using the software, that we see a lot more issues, and that goes across all industries, including the public sector. And I think it can be even further of a problem in public sector because of the hierarchical nature. And then if you take this approach that we are going to design this solution and we're going to give it to people, and then we're going to teach people how to use it, and they're going to take it. And I think that approach, unfortunately, frequently fails because the different hierarchical levels don't truly understand the details of the problems and the issues that people are having. And when you don't involve those people in the solution design and in implementation of the product, you're going to have a lot more different problems. So that's sort of my first, general comment from the delivery perspective, like, how to make sure adoption is better. Obviously, the more technology you have, then you can have variety of resources. You can have hybrid approaches. You can have some things online, the other things in person. And that is also a little bit depends on what type of public agency that you're dealing with. And some agencies that may not be possible. The only option that you may have is in-person training. Or in some cases, they may require you to write up instructions instead of video-based content. So those types of things you really have to work with and really truly understand just to how to make it work for that particular organization, and then build a plan that's going to make sure that there's inclusivity from every part of the units. So I don't know, Bobby, what are your thoughts on that? But
Yeah, I think you mentioned. I mean, again, not every public sector organization is the same, but like you said, tendencies are there's a lot of bureaucracy, but it can be good and bad. I think sometimes that bureaucracy can actually benefit because it puts structure around change management that has to be in place, whereas a private organization, there's no regulation around this, so you can get this kind of spread that says we don't want to do it. You're
yeah,
crazy. We're not doing any of this. Whatever that can happen in a private organization where there's guardrails in public sector that kind of prevent that. So it kind of forces some of that change management. Whether or not it's overall successful, and how successful it is, can also be determined on how you go about approaching it, like you said, and what approach you take to digging in and getting the right pieces in place when you're talking about proper change management structure. But I think the guardrails there are interesting to me in public sector because I think there's a greater chance of it happening, at least having a runway.
yes. No, I do agree. I think I do agree also from the perspective of, I think when you have that type of a budget, like for example, the simplest example is the budgeting approach, right? You budget a D365 implementation, a certain amount of dollars have to be put into change management, adoption, and training. So in a more public sector implementation, it's going to be really hard to take a little bit of that money and apply it to something else, which is something that we see very commonly in more regular, like a private sector
Right. Because
implementation.
hey, we'll forget about change
Exactly.
management. Take this money money over here, and then we
Yeah,
don't
or
care.
we really like need this now because we need to make this extension. So let's just take some money and we'll figure it out later type of perspective. And
Yep.
then it ends up, always, I always say a lot of the times, 90% of the time, the things that get cut off from the budget will be related to training or adoption or documentation
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
something like that. And then they'll just cut that off and then just apply it to something else. Then you have to decide, oh, what are we going to do now? But like you said, in a public sector environment, that when you have requirements and regulations that this money must be applied to these types of activities and tasks, then that is actually better for the training and change management, that you cannot really use it for something else. An interesting thing that's sort of similar to this that I found out that I did not know before I was in the training sector is in Canada, you can, when you are doing a D365 implementation, even as a private company, you can apply for government subsidies for the training part of the D365 implementation. And
Yeah,
also
that's great.
Canada, one thing is they subsidize. The number two is your companies are legally required to provide training if they're doing a project like this. So it's basically it's for the benefit of the employees, that they don't want employees not to have a training. So all of those things, it's absolutely it pushes them to make sure to make the user community a priority. And again, it's it's an advantage of a more rigid sort of approach in that case as well.
Like you said, projects slide. So you got a project timeline, and it grows and creeps, and then we're up to that go live, and it's like, well, we're at go live. Do we push it to allow for training and all these other things, or do we just have to go live? And oftentimes you see the latter, is just go live, and then you forego training, because we'll get the training, it'll happen. People are used to doing it on the go, and but like you said, it doesn't really support the end user. It cripples the end user in their ability to get up to speed faster and to feel supported. So
yeah, I think it boils down to that. I think more of that IT approach, like the software approach. I think a lot of the companies are still in that mindset: is the software is ready, then we go live. Whether or not the people are ready or not is just very lower in the priority list, which is unfortunate, because the amount of money that is spent on making that software or bringing that software to that level is just millions and millions of dollars, and you just have to spend a very small fraction of that money on making the people ready. And I think it's unfortunate that you can have this great functioning software, but when people don't know how to use it, then what do you do with it?
Crushes their soul. They get software and they don't. It's like, you're live now, and you're like, but I don't know what to do.
Exactly. And it's like the super sophisticated, and it can do all of these things to you, but I don't know how to do my job,
Right.
So
and they end up doing the most rote things. Like, okay, well, I just got to dig in and make sure I can post a journal. So that's all I ever do, is this like really rote actions. And you never really get to use this great piece of software you put into place.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's something that universal. Again, I think it's just we're I think going to go back and forth with the public sector and the normal D365 implementations, and I find that the people who have gone through an ERP implementation before, they have a much better understanding of what it will take. And I think one recommendation that I would do any organization who's going to go through a D365 implementation is to find more people who have already gone through D365 implementations, and try to hire them as a project manager. If you're hiring a change manager, adoption manager, that try to really find people that have gone through one already, and that can bring a completely different perspective than anything else. And I don't know, I mean, maybe this is a question for you guys too, is like, I don't have as much experience with other ERP software, but I presume my general thinking is I feel like D365 is quite unique the way it's designed, the way that we generally partners implemented, the whole ecosystem with Microsoft and the implementation partners. I feel like you cannot really put it into the same category as like an SAP, Oracle, some other software. I don't know if the transition works well if you have worked with another ERP and all of a sudden now you're going to implement D365. I'm not 100% bought on the idea that somebody can make that switch very easily. I'm not sure if you've seen that in the past, either one of you.
I've gone from another system to Dynamics. I've scoped out Dynamics to another system. And there are distinct differences, like you said. It is unique in the way that, for instance, a company going from Dynamics to another system, which was proprietary, which was installed by the software maker. So difference, Microsoft makes a software, Ellipse installs it. Um,
Yes.
that's the model that Microsoft prefers. They prefer, to have these solutions implementers out there. X company creates a software, but they also want to install it, do all the development. They handle everything. So you're relying completely on them for every step of the way, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
ISVs and all the other little things or internal development. You just can't do it because it's proprietary. So it is widely different. And then coming from a model where we didn't have anything, we couldn't do anything ourselves to being able to do a
Mm.
lot ourselves is a huge change as well. So there's definitely lots of factors that go into either side of that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Kind of moving forward a little bit within, we talked about generational differences and everything like that. I'm kind of curious, just to play devil's advocate here, do you feel like, resistance to change does that always mean it's a bad thing? Questioning the changes in these processes that we're making? Or could that maybe be a good thing in certain instances as well?
You know, in my experience, the earlier you start the process, so if you're doing a project, whether it's an ERP implementation or teeny little project within the ERP, um, I've had best success when you're getting people on board at the beginning. So if I'm doing an accounting project and Savannah and Elif are in accounting, I'm going to bring you in. Typically you're coming to me as an IT person saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, we need this," and I'm just helping to talk it out and get the right solution. But then maybe it is Elif coming, but we have to sell it to Savannah because it's really going to affect her at the end of the day. The sooner I get you on board, the process, the better. And so it really doesn't have to be a formal, like, now we've got to sit down for an hour of change management. Sometimes it's organic. It just happens because you're bringing the people in, and it doesn't have to be so. It's not like, again, so structured. Like, step one, change management. A, B, C. It's just like, hey, we're getting Savannah involved now. She knows what's going on, and if that's to answer your question directly. That's the point where I would hope that you are engaging in conversations around, um, you know, the good and bad of what you're doing, how to get the best possible solution out of what it is you're being asked to do. And then you're even, it's almost the change management is happening in that moment too, in my opinion. Like, so Elif is giving her opinion, Savannah's giving her opinion, I'm giving my opinion. We're coming up with a solution, and by the end, you're part of the solution. There is no change management now.
Mm-hmm.
We're here. So at a larger scale, then if you think about it from an ERP side, then you do have to have strategic people, kind of like Elif said. You're hiring them or you're training them, subject matter experts or SMEs, champions within your organization that are there with you. You're getting them first. You're kind of bringing them in, and they're getting that first level of education on why you're doing something, why we're moving from JD Edwards to Dynamics 365. And once they get it and they start to see the value, then you bring the next level in, and that's where maybe more structured change management happens at that larger scale. But
Yeah.
I would say I'm always looking for the dissent. I want
Yeah.
dissent opinions and
Yes.
value those before we're making an overall decision.
Yeah, I do agree. I think the resistance is a good indicator. Like, it's just, I think A lot of people are like, oh, worried about resistance, but I think resistance gives you a signal that those people, if they're resisting to whatever that they're resisting to, they obviously don't feel comfortable with it. And it could be multiple reasons. One is they just may not understand, like they may not have the enough knowledge, understanding of what's happening, so then they'll be like, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to, I don't want to be in a position of responsibility when I don't know what my ramifications of my decisions are going to be. And then in that case, of course, like that, something that I think, like Bobby said, is exactly right. Like you can avoid some of that by educating them a lot earlier, folding them into the solution design a lot earlier. The more they are aware of the change and not some hypothetical level. And I think that's where the resistance comes. Yeah, somebody says we're implementing D365, your job is going to actually change, but then how it's going to change? How am I going to do my job? What are the things that are going to be different? Am I going to be able to provide service to my customers, etc.? All of these questions, as they are answered and as that person feels comfortable and confident, then they are not going to resist as much, and they're going to fold other people into their knowledge group as well, because then they're able to explain to the same person, oh, you don't have to worry about that because the system does this, or I've seen it and I've done it myself. And a lot of it requires repetition and over covering some of these topics to elevate their confidence in themselves and in the system that they're implementing. I think one thing about generally in D365 implementations, there's this misconception that there should be harmony all the time. I think that's really not the case. And I think the conflict and resistance and discussions and problems and meltdowns, whatever you call them, that should be considered as the norm. When I was as a part of in my consulting career, I did also a lot of training for consultants, like the consultants that we hired that were going to visit. And then I would tell them like this, just, you have to remove this notion that all of these things that I have counted are problems. They're not problems. That's the norm. That is going to be your life. There's always going to be some resistance, some issues, something that you have to deal with. And you focus on that problem, solve that problem, then you move on to something else, because, next week there'll be something completely different and you won't even remember what you did 2 weeks ago. It's just, I think the normalizing that is also just normalizing that for the consultants and normalizing that for the customer who's going through an implementation and saying that this is the norm. It's just going to be lots of conflict, lots of discussions, and lots of disagreements, but that's just the way things are going to be decided, and at the end we are going to be all on the same page. And I think when you look with that perspective, you don't just sort of freak out, and every time there's resistance, when there's a discussion in the meeting, and you just basically calmly say, yes, I understand this is an issue, but let's just work through it and figure it out.
Yeah, much better than saying everything's going to be perfect, don't worry.
Yes, it's not.
You bring the elephant in the room with you. It's like, let his trunk fly, whatever, so that it's screaming at you right away, because there's going to be that disharmony and that resistance that you have to address. But yeah, being as open and as honest and as caring and respectful to, because this is the one thing you have to remember in change management, is that it'd be like me coming over to your house right now, Savannah, saying, hey, I'm just going to rearrange your kitchen because I know better how to put your spices in the right places. And you're gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
But I like my oregano, or I like my oregano. So,
Yeah.
how do we get it in the right, get the right mind frame, and so people can see the value and listen, because you may think something is like, oh, but I didn't think about why you would want your oregano here. You know what?
Yeah.
Let's keep it there. That's, you
Yeah.
want, it's no big deal to the project. Let's do it. It's going to make you happy. I don't see any value in making that particular change. So we're learning in the process, and we're like I said, we're giving people a voice and a say and a stake at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's also like you said, Bobby, is like I think assuming the best in people is a better approach than not assuming the worst in people. I think we sometimes tend to do that too. It's just like anything in life. We spend a lot more of our times in the negative things in our lives. You know, if 90% of our life is going good, and the 10% is some issues that our mind, our effort, our thinking is about that 10%. We're not really saying that 90% of the great things that I have, but 10% because that's just a problem area. And I think, I feel like D365 implementations are like that too. And you could have a pretty good implementation going, and then the only small parts are like problematic. But unfortunately, those problematic parts are what takes your time and effort because it needs to be dealt with. And then that can create this notion of thinking that the person that you're dealing with or group of people that you're dealing with are just difficult. You know, they're just sort of doing it on purpose, or they're just hard. And I think stepping back from that and just sort of checking yourself and saying that, no, like I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because even I think, unless it's a very rare circumstance, I think everybody at their work wants to do well. They want to do well for their own career. They want to do well for their company. So unless there's a malicious situation, which of course, you know, occasionally 1 in a million can happen. But I think we have to, if we have that attitude of everybody comes to the table with a positive attitude and for the betterment of this organization, then everything just goes a lot better.
Agree with that.
Loving this advice, you guys. I'm like feeling uplifted over here.
Yeah,
transcends change management.
No, I mean, I will tell you this. I've had so many in my entire career, but in consulting too. Like I'd get up in the morning and I'm gonna go to this very difficult meeting. I know, like it's gonna blow up. But I just have to tell myself every time, it's okay. It's gonna be fine. And 2 weeks later, it'll be something else. Like today, it's like the earth is like shattering everything. And soon enough, you go and people are people. If you approach them and like, oh, this has happened, you know, and then they listen to you and, you know, they may yell at you and whatever is going to happen. But the next day is a new day, right? You move on and you start working on something else. So I think it's a good advice not to dwell on these types of issues too drastically. I think it's good for your heart and it's good for everybody's involved. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like transparency is kind of key here, from being upfront. That way no one is kind of taken aback by what's going on, anything like that. Continuous education. You know, if you kind of mentioned already some training models that could work with anyone who's maybe hesitant, doing maybe a hybrid approach of maybe online, in-person training, that sort of thing. Do you have any other pieces of advice when it comes to training? Kind of what you've seen in the past works best?
Yeah, I think few things we touched upon. One is to definitely, you know, from the TikTok example, is to making the learning units a lot smaller and not really making it large chunks of materials. I think that we've seen our materials in our training platform is designed that way. Every video that we have is like 2 to 6 minutes in length. And in each video, we're teaching them a skill. It helps in multiple ways. One is it's short and it's precise. So if you want to like find a video that does specifically this, it's much easier than digging through a 35-minute video and just figuring out where exactly they were doing this. So it really improves search capabilities for the person. And then instead of like trying to watch the 35-minute video to find that exact moment, that you just precisely go and find exactly what you're looking for it also makes it easier to pause it, go into D365, play around. So this is generally called micro-learning. So it's a strategy that's been advocated a lot more in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years. So you, especially in the video type of training approach, I would definitely recommend that. I love like the job cards, one single page job, aids. I think those are very helpful. I think the video training is really, it teaches you how to do things, like how to really master a skill. But the job cards are usually a great way of reminding you, like just really quickly look at it, what I should have done. I'm not a huge fan of, for example, large documents, lengthy instructions, except there are some cases I advocate for it when, for example, in very complicated accounting procedures and configurations and things like that. I think they're super helpful to have that type of detail in written documentation. This sort of like combination of the three, the video, job aids, and the detailed instructions, depending on the situation and your audience, is sort of a good combination. And also, I'm an advocate for using recorded videos for in-person training. So that's why one of the things that we always advocate is to take this hybrid approach where you have an online training tool where you can use anytime you like, however many times you like, because in many cases, when you put a person in a classroom training, you teach them, let's just take example of like how to create a purchase order, right? The instructor will go through it one time, and there'll be many people who will never ask a question in a classroom training. It's just who they are. Whatever the reason that they're not going to ask questions, they're not going to do anything. So when you offer them that training material also in a video format, and they can consume it at their own pace, at their own time, they have the option to watch it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. If they didn't understand it, they don't need to be like in front of their peers asking questions that they didn't want to ask. So that's from that perspective, I really like the combination of the video, like online training, and the in-person training, because in-person training is also very helpful because people can ask questions. It's more interactive. Like Bobby said, you just sort of like look eye to eye. Other people that participate, you can have a discussion. I think it definitely has a huge place in implementation trainings, but I also like that solidarity of that online training option and have it available in the back for the user. And especially if you lean into this type of video training concept, one of the challenges we have with D365 implementations when we're doing in-person training is that D365 has to work, and like when you're in front of a classroom, I don't know, Bobby, you can comment about this, how many times you're like, the demo gods, everybody sort of talks about the demo gods. It's sort of like similar to the training gods, I guess, is that you're trying to like show something and it just doesn't work. Either the software has an issue, the data has an issue. So then what do? You've already, put all of these 20 people in a room, which is probably a challenge by itself. So I am a big advocate of like using those videos in-person training as well. And you can just mute. If they're voiceover videos, you can just mute it, and then you can just run the video. You can pause it at any time. Now, if your D365 instance works, great, awesome. But if it doesn't, then you have this option that you can take advantage of. So I think there's a lot of benefits into exploring different mediums to deliver to the learners in a variety of formats. Maybe in a little bit, we will also talk about, we recently did some work to make the training materials also available on the Copilot sidecar. So that's something like just completely new, which is more of that embedded learning experience for the learners. And I think that's going to be the future, more of the future, where the learners won't have to go somewhere else to learn about D365, but they can actually have the links while they're in the software and then just click on the videos and directly watch it from there. So I think that's one of the first steps in the AI journey for the D365 learning community that is going to happen. I mean, it has happened. We are offering it. And I think customers will start to take advantage of that as well.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like there's a ton of different avenues to get training materials. There's no excuse. There's something for everyone, it sounds like. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping the training, I was gonna say in the middle, keeping the, just one little note, keeping the training relevant it can be really helpful. So the training videos can be great when you're doing training, with an organization. Even if it's, I was just training some folks in ERP. A lot of them didn't know ERP, so therefore these concepts are so high level. But finding areas, it takes a little work, but finding areas to make that relevant for a person or a group can really make connections. Like you see it happen in the moment. It's like, oh, I didn't think about that, but now I understand, just because I took the concept, brought it to something that they knew, and had some relevancy with, and then it created a connection to understanding the entire process. So having relevance is easy or important for
Yeah.
sure.
I would just add to that is, I think from what I see with the customers that I work, like when I look at two different customers that are using our platform, pretty much like equal usage, equal number of users, when I look, and sometimes I see a big difference in the success ratio. And when I I look at this a lot because I want our customers to be successful, use our platform or take advantage of it. And then I'm always like asking why has this was a success, but not this one. I am more and more convinced the primary reason is really an internal champion. I would put that on top of the list, is to have someone in the organization who advocates for training, follows up with the learners, works with us, because there's always going to be some issues. People will not have time, etc., etc. But having someone responsible from that process keeps the organization in check, keeps us in check. It keeps everybody, we become more of a partner than just a vendor that just offers training and then you just use it whenever you want to. But it just makes it a lot more complete approach and just brings much, much better success.
It has to be at multiple
Definitely.
levels. It has to be at the executive level, and then maybe not. So you can't be like, you know, Jody in the accounting departments are championing it for training, and she loves it, and
Yeah.
she yells and yells. But there's got to be that executive sponsor, an HR, C-level
Yes.
person, or your CEO, or somebody going, hey, nope. As an organization, we value training, we value change management. So, we've got this set up and we follow these principles because of this, and that helps us be successful. And we support all that. So you have that backing so people can't shirk it off.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all of your insight that you've shared, Elif. I think we've touched on some great points here. Was there anything that we didn't discuss that maybe you wanted to hit on before we kind of signed off?
I don't think so. I think generally, just this has been a little bit of a thought in the back of my mind. Also, we touched upon a little bit the whole AI and how, AI Copilot. I mean, just Copilot is obviously the AI product of Microsoft, but there are also a bunch of other AI tools out there that are able to do other things. So it's going to be, I think, interesting next couple of years to see how this artificial intelligence is going to change the way people consume training. So generally, as humans, we tend to make this generalized statements, like currently so many people are going to lose their jobs. AI is going to replace all kinds of stuff. I am not in that school of thought. I think it will make a lot of changes, to things, but I don't think it will obviously change the concept of learning. People still have to learn things. People will still have to perform tasks. But it's going to be interesting to see how they learn, how they consume training. How can we offer them things that are helpful, relevant, to Bobby's point, in a streamlined manner. I think it's going to be interesting next couple of years to just go through that process, and see also like what type of companies take upon a new way of doing things, versus which type of companies it takes a little bit longer. I think there's a lot of pressure from upper managements. Currently, all the C-suites and everybody is telling their people, we need to be using more AI, but what does that mean? Is I think still the jury is out on that, and I anticipate a lot of changes in that. So I think it's exciting. The last I would say two months or so, we've done a lot of work, and it's been eye-opening to see how it can be wonderful, but it can also be incredibly frustrating and difficult to implement, because implementing something for yourself is something completely different than being able to give it to our customers. So we can make it work for ourselves, but if we want to share with a customer, packaging that is just by itself is also a fundamental challenge. What's the security? Who pays for it? All of these things are the things that are going to be sorted out in the next few years, which makes me, I don't want to say nervous, cautiously optimistic and excited at the same time. I don't know, Bobby, if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm in the camp of, watching it change, monthly here as we're moving through, and knowing that I also don't prescribe to the idea that it's going to, just slice, chunks of jobs away, that it's not quite there in my opinion. But I think the value is learning how to use it. And I think you're shifting your responsibility and what you might be doing in a job to something different. That's all. But still a lot of activity, a lot of people still learning what to do with it. So it's going to go. AI is going to be adopted as fast as the fastest C level folks, and they're still hesitant to some degree to in what they're doing. So
yep.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah,
fun. What an exciting time to be living in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last time on Bobby and I's last podcast, I think you mentioned it's kind of like you're in a time where a huge invention is being made, and I feel like we don't realize it even. It's going to be
fun to recognize where it's all around us, like it's being in the eye of the storm. Like when a hurricane comes over, and most of the activity, if you're feeling it, you're not in the eye of the storm. It's when it gets calm and you're in the eye of the storm that you don't realize what's going on around you. And I think that's what it feels like sometimes, being at the precipice of where we are with AI. We're kind of right there, and it's all happening around us, and it's pretty exciting when you stick your hand in and get a piece of it. So yeah, I mean, I think when we recognize it, it's quite exhilarating.
Awesome.
Crazy stuff.
Yes.
Well, Elif, thank you again. I hope to see you at maybe some upcoming events. I always love hearing you talk, and especially in Women in Tech and all of that good stuff.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll be at DynamicsCon.
I will be there. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Doing some other things.
Yes, I am going to be there. I'm super excited about it, so I cannot wait. I've already seen the hotel because I was there for the leadership meeting. It's phenomenal. I think people are going to love it. Just beautiful hotel, beautiful venue. I'm very, very excited about it.
Yes, me too. I've never been to Vegas, so very excited.
Oh, wow.
Vegas.
Yeah.
That's going to be, you should definitely allocate like an extra day and go see the Sphere. I haven't been inside, so that I am going to make a point of booking something while we're there to go see it. Yeah. It's not super far from, we're not like, we could see it from the window of the hotel. So, I definitely want to give it a try. Everybody says it's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I think the week of DynamicsCon, they're playing like Wizard of Oz there or something.
Wizard of Oz playing. Yeah, we should maybe. Well, I'm sure there'll be on Whova is going to have any number of people going to the sphere. So
Oh yeah.
Yes.
keep an eye out for those meetups.
Yes.
I'm sure it'd be fun
For
to go with a
sure.
huge group of Dynamics folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, awesome. Well, thanks
Sounds
again, you
good.
guys. It's
Well,
always
thank you
fun
so
to
much for
chat.
having me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
You
Take
too.
care.
Okay.